What's happening in Israel right now is beyond heartbreaking. If you're like me, you've come here tonight with a heavy heart, feeling the weight of all these atrocities we've been hearing about and seeing. It's so bad, in fact, that even the media has been blurring out parts of it, trying to shield us from the worst. But every day that passes since Hamas launched their attack, we learn more, and honestly, it just gets harder to hear. I won't go into the details because it's too much to bear, but I'm sure you've seen it all in the news. This video is meant to talk about the difficult reality of what's going on and why it's so important that we stand with Israel during these dark times. Hamas is not just a political group or a militant organization. At its core, Hamas is a terrorist group, one that has been driven by an agenda to completely eliminate Israel from the map. From the very start, their goal has never been to negotiate or live alongside Israel peacefully, but to eradicate it entirely. This isn't just about a piece of land, a boundary dispute, or a fight over resources. No, it goes deeper than that. It's about hatred, pure, unrelenting hatred. Hatred that unfortunately has been fueled by the darkest of forces. It's not just about what Hamas wants, it's about what they represent. They represent the forces of evil, anti-Semitism, and the spiritual attack on a people and a nation chosen by God for a purpose. Now, to understand why Hamas does what it does, we have to look at the deeper historical and spiritual context. Hamas operates under a clear ideology. They believe that Israel does not have a right to exist, and they're willing to use any method, violence, terrorism, manipulation, and deceit to achieve their goal of complete destruction. Their hatred is not new. It's been brewing for generations. This hatred isn't just about the modern political conflict that we see today, but a long-standing animosity that has deep roots in the history of Israel and the Jewish people. This hatred can be traced all the way back to ancient times. From a spiritual perspective, this is where things get heavy. The Bible tells us that Satan, the enemy of God, has been at war with the people of Israel since the very beginning. Why Israel? Why this particular people? This small nation? Well, Israel is the key to God's redemptive plan for the world. It was through Israel, and specifically through a Jewish man named Jesus, that salvation came to the world. God chose Israel to carry out his plan of redemption through a savior who would come and die for the sins of all people. And ever since that moment, Israel has been under spiritual attack. Satan has always tried to destroy Israel, from Pharaoh in ancient Egypt trying to wipe out the Israelites, to the Roman Empire's attempt to crush them in the 1st century, to the countless attempts throughout history to destroy the Jewish people. This is not a coincidence. There is a deep spiritual reason for the persistent hatred against Israel. Satan has always been against the plan of redemption that God has set in motion through Israel. If Israel is wiped out, then God's plan is thwarted, and Satan believes he can win. So the hatred and the attacks are spiritual at their core, and they manifest through organizations like Hamas. Hamas is an embodiment of this hatred. Their very existence is a reflection of the spiritual battle. They claim to be fighting for the Palestinian people, but at the heart of their message is a deep, religiously motivated desire to destroy the Jewish state. Their leaders talk openly about their desire to kill Jews and to wipe Israel off the map. It's not about peace. It's not about compromise. It's about complete and utter destruction. And this rhetoric, this evil, has been allowed to grow unchecked for far too long. The world has seen it, heard it, and even at times condoned it, whether through ignorance or misguided attempts at diplomacy. Now, when we talk about the actions of Hamas, we're not just talking about bombings, rocket attacks, and terror in the streets. We're talking about a whole culture of violence and hatred that has been ingrained into generations of Palestinians and others in the region. Education systems, media, and even religious sermons in Gaza and other places have been used to teach children and adults alike that the Jewish people are evil, that they deserve to be killed, and that anyone who fights for this cause is a hero, when it's an ideology built on lies, built on hatred, and it's been passed down from one generation to the next. This isn't a conflict about territory, it's about ideology. It's about a deeply rooted belief that Israel's existence is an affront to their religious beliefs and a denial of their self-declared entitlement to the land. Hamas has been relentless in its efforts to spread this hatred, to make it a central tenet of their political and military strategy. But what's even worse is that they don't just want to kill Israelis, they want to destroy the very idea of Israel, and they've made it clear that they want to erase it from the face of the earth. And it's not just words, their actions prove it. The horrors they have unleashed on the people of Israel over the years, mass murders, kidnappings, suicide bombings, and rocket attacks, these aren't isolated incidents. They are part of a systematic effort to dismantle Israel and all that it represents. And here's the thing, the world has seen this evil and failed to call it out for what it is. There are still those who want to negotiate with Hamas, to try to reason with them as if they could somehow be made to understand the value of peace. But peace isn't on their agenda. You can't negotiate with a terrorist group that openly calls for your destruction. You can't reason with an ideology that has been formed in the furnace of hatred, fueled by a deep-seated belief in its own moral superiority. It's not just Hamas that's involved in this battle. It's not just a regional conflict, but a global one. The influence of external powers, especially Iran, has been a critical factor in the escalation of violence. Iran has been supplying Hamas and other groups with weapons, funding, and logistical support. Iran's goal is to see Israel destroyed, and it's doing everything it can to make that happen. This is why the conflict has grown so complex. It's no longer just about two sides fighting over a piece of land. It's about larger geopolitical forces, some of which are actively seeking Israel's destruction, using Hamas as their weapon. But we need to understand that this is not just a military battle. This is a spiritual battle. The world has been watching this unfold, and there's a reason why Israel is such a focal point. The hatred against Israel is not just based on politics, geography, or economics. It is rooted in a spiritual conflict that goes back to the very beginning of time. The enemy wants to destroy God's plan, and Israel is at the center of that plan. So when we look at what Hamas is doing, when we look at the violence and the terror they're spreading, we have to see it for what it truly is. It's an attack on God's redemptive plan for the world. In this battle, the stakes are incredibly high. It's not just about territory or even just the Jewish people, it's about the very future of humanity. If Israel is wiped out, then God's plan is delayed. But here's the thing, God has made a promise. He will not abandon Israel. He will not allow his plan to fail. And while Hamas and others may have their moment, we know the end of the story. The God of Israel is faithful, and no matter how much hatred is directed at his people, he will protect them. The battle is not just political, it's spiritual. And it's a battle that we must all pay attention to. So, when we see Hamas and their supporters carry out these evil acts, we must remember where this is coming from. This isn't just a political disagreement. It's not just about land or resources. It's a fight against God's plan, a fight against the people he has chosen to bring his redemption to the world. And in the end, that's why we must stand with Israel, not because of any political alliance, but because we understand the spiritual significance of this battle. And we must support them, pray for them, and fight for their right to exist, because ultimately, we are fighting for the fulfillment of God's plan for the world. The story of Israel's formation is deeply rooted in the Bible, and its purpose is inseparable from God's larger plan for the world. It all begins with a man named Abraham. In the book of Genesis, we learn that God chose Abraham to be the father of a great nation. But it wasn't just any nation, it was a nation that would play a crucial role in God's plan for redemption. God made a covenant with Abraham, promising that through his descendants, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. This wasn't just about Abraham or his immediate family. This promise reached beyond him to the generations that would come after him, to the nation that would be formed from his bloodline. Israel then was not simply a nation like any other. It was a nation formed by divine intervention, with a purpose far beyond the natural, political, or geographical boundaries we think of when we look at nations today. God raised up Israel as part of his redemptive plan for the world. And what's incredible about this is that God's plan for Israel wasn't just about establishing a people. It was about preparing a way for the Messiah, the Savior, to come into the world. Let's step back for a moment and think about the significance of this. God didn't just randomly pick Israel to be his people. He chose them for a reason. Israel was chosen to be the vehicle through which the world would receive its Redeemer. Through the descendants of Abraham, God would bring forth the Messiah, Jesus, who would die for the sins of the entire world. This is why Israel's formation is so central to God's plan of salvation. God's plan was always about redemption. It was about bringing hope to a fallen world, and Israel was meant to be the starting point of that hope. Now, this is where things get really interesting, because the formation of Israel and its role in God's plan is not without its opposition. From the very beginning, the forces of darkness have sought to thwart God's plan. Satan has always been at work, trying to prevent the Messiah from coming. The Bible tells us that Satan, the enemy of God, has been working tirelessly to destroy Israel, because if Israel is destroyed, God's plan of redemption is delayed. In fact, Satan has made it his mission to attack Israel from the moment the nation was born. This is why, throughout history, we see one attack after another against Israel and the Jewish people. Why would Satan be so intent on destroying Israel? The answer lies in the fact that Israel's existence points to something greater. Israel is the nation through which God brought salvation into the world. Jesus, the Savior of the world, was born into this nation. The very existence of Israel stands as a witness to God's redemptive plan. Israel is not just a political entity, it's a spiritual symbol of hope and salvation. And Satan knows that if he can destroy Israel, he can delay or even prevent the coming of God's plan through the Messiah. This is why Satan has incited nations, people, and organizations to rise up against Israel time and time again. It's not about territory, it's about the bigger picture of God's eternal plan. The Bible makes it clear that Satan has been opposed to God's redemptive plan from the start. In the book of Revelation, we read about the dragon, the symbol of Satan, who is depicted as standing ready to devour the child that the woman Israel gives birth to. This is a reference to Jesus, the Messiah, who was born through the Jewish people. Or the dragon, Satan, has always been poised to destroy the Savior, to prevent the redemptive plan from coming to fruition. And this is what we see playing out throughout history. Every time God's plan advances through Israel, Satan raises up opposition, trying to destroy it, to undermine it, and to delay it. Think about the story of Moses, for example. The Israelites were enslaved in Egypt, and God sent Moses to deliver them. But what happened? Pharaoh, under the influence of Satan, tried to destroy the Israelites by ordering the death of every male child born to the Hebrews. He feared that a deliverer, a leader who would rise up from among the Israelites, would eventually overthrow his rule. So he sought to destroy the very people who were chosen to bring forth God's plan. But God intervened, and Moses was spared, eventually leading the Israelites to freedom. This is just one example of how Satan has worked throughout history to destroy Israel and prevent the coming of the Messiah. And then we have the story of King Herod, who, when he heard that a king had been born in Israel, Jesus, the Messiah ordered the massacre of all male children under the age of 2 in Bethlehem. Herod, in his attempt to hold on to power and prevent the rise of the Messiah, carried out this horrific act. Again, Satan was at work, trying to stop God's plan in its tracks. But God protected Jesus, and the plan of redemption continued to move forward. Even in the days leading up to Jesus' crucifixion, we see this spiritual battle playing out. The religious leaders of Israel, many of whom were influenced by Satan's lies, rejected Jesus as the Messiah. They sought to kill him, to stop the fulfillment of God's plan. But through Jesus' death on the cross, God's redemptive plan was fulfilled. The Messiah did come, and his sacrifice brought salvation to the world. Satan may have thought he had won, but the death of Jesus on the cross was actually his defeat. Through Jesus' resurrection, the plan of redemption was sealed, and Israel's role in that plan was confirmed. But the battle is not over. Even today, Israel continues to face intense opposition. The forces of darkness, led by Satan, continue to seek to destroy Israel and prevent God's redemptive plan from unfolding. And this is why we must understand that the conflict we see today is not just a political issue, it's a spiritual one. The hatred against Israel is not just about land, resources, or politics. It's a spiritual battle that has been raging for thousands of years. Satan's ultimate goal is to thwart God's plan of redemption, and Israel stands as a reminder of that plan. Yet, despite the opposition, God's promise to Israel remains. God has made a covenant with his people, and he will not break that promise. Israel's formation, its history, its struggles, and its survival all point to the truth that God's plan is unstoppable. No matter how many enemies rise up against Israel, no matter how many forces of evil come against them, God will protect his people, and his plan will ultimately prevail. Israel's formation and its role in God's plan for redemption are a testament to God's faithfulness. It's a reminder that even in the midst of darkness, God's light shines through. Israel is not just a random nation, it is the nation through which God has chosen to reveal his redemptive plan to the world. And despite all the opposition, Israel will remain, because God is faithful and he will bring his plan to completion. This is why we, as believers, must stand with Israel. We must pray for them, support them, and understand that their struggle is not just about politics, it's about the fulfillment of God's plan for the world. Israel's survival and the eventual return of the Messiah are inseparable. And as we look at the state of the world today, we must recognize that the battle for Israel is a battle for God's redemptive plan to be fulfilled. And we know that in the end, God will have the victory. Satan may fight against Israel, but in the end, Israel will stand and God's plan of redemption will come to its glorious conclusion. My connection to Israel goes beyond what you might read in the news or hear from afar. It's personal. Over the years, I've made several trips to Israel, and each one has left a lasting impact on my heart. Israel is not just a place, it's a land rich with history, culture, and deep spiritual significance. But what makes it truly special are the people I've met there. These are not just people in a distant land, they've become friends. Many of whom I've gotten to know through my travels and interactions over the years. I've had the privilege of spending time in places like Jerusalem, Nazareth, and Bethlehem, and I've formed relationships with individuals and families whose lives have been marked by both incredible joy and unimaginable hardship. These friendships have given me a glimpse into the everyday reality of the Jewish people living in Israel. I've had the opportunity to talk with those who have witnessed the history of this land firsthand, from its triumphs to its ongoing struggles. These friendships aren't just about the things we have in common. They're about standing together in the midst of adversity, supporting one another through times of crisis, and sharing in the beauty of this incredible place. Through these connections, I've come to understand just how much Israel means to the Jewish people. For them, Israel isn't just a piece of land on a map, it's the fulfillment of ancient promises, a place of safety and belonging after centuries of persecution. It's a home that has been rebuilt from the ashes of a past filled with sorrow. And the people I've met there are deeply committed to preserving that home for future generations. They don't take their existence for granted, and they cherish the peace and stability that they've worked so hard to achieve. But as much as Israel means to the Jewish people, I've also come to see that Israel is a beacon of hope for the world. It's a symbol of resilience, of perseverance, and of the unshakable belief that no matter how many times the world has tried to destroy them, the Jewish people will not be defeated. They've faced so much throughout history: wars, displacement, and the horrors of the Holocaust, but they continue to rise, to rebuild, and to thrive. And in their time of crisis, it's crucial for us to stand with them. They need our support now more than ever. In times like these, when Israel is under attack and facing unimaginable threats, the importance of supporting them cannot be overstated. We can't afford to remain silent or indifferent. Israel is not just a country, it's a people who have endured so much, and they deserve to know that they are not alone. When we stand with Israel, we're not just supporting a political entity, we're supporting a people who are fighting for their right to exist, for their right to live in peace. And that's something we all should care about. One of the most meaningful ways we can support Israel is through prayer. It may sound simple, but prayer is powerful. When we pray for Israel, we're not just asking for protection or peace, we're acknowledging the significance of this land and the people who call it home. We're standing in solidarity with those who are fighting for their survival, and we're asking God to intervene on their behalf. Prayer is a way to show that we care, that we're not just watching from the sidelines, but that we're actively engaged in supporting them in their time of need. But support for Israel isn't just about prayer, it's also about advocacy. It's about speaking up when we see injustice, when we hear lies being spread, when we witness hatred being directed at the Jewish people. We must be willing to stand up and speak out in defense of Israel, to educate others about the truth of the situation, and to challenge the false narratives that are so often spread in the media. Israel is not perfect, and no one is claiming that it is, but it has a right to exist, and its people have a right to live in safety and peace. And when that right is threatened, it's up to us to stand by them. Supporting Israel also means understanding the historical and spiritual significance of this nation. Israel is not just a modern state, it's the fulfillment of ancient promises that God made to the Jewish people. It's the land where so much of the Bible's story unfolds. It's the place where Jesus was born, lived, and died. When we support Israel, we're supporting a people who have been central to God's plan of redemption for the world. And that's something worth standing up for. We're not just standing with a nation, we're standing with the people who have been chosen by God for a special purpose, a purpose that has eternal significance. Through my own personal connections to Israel, I've seen the strength and resilience of the Jewish people firsthand. I've heard their stories, felt their pain, and witnessed their hope. And that's why, when Israel faces these attacks, it feels personal to me. These are not just abstract concepts or distant conflicts. These are real people with real lives who are being threatened and attacked. And when we stand with Israel, we're not just supporting a political stance. We're supporting our brothers and sisters in their fight for survival and for the fulfillment of God's plan. So, in this time of crisis, it's more important than ever that we stand with Israel. It's easy to get lost in the noise of the media, to be swayed by the opinions of others, to be discouraged by the overwhelming challenges Israel faces. But we must remember the truth: Israel is not alone. We are with them, and the Jewish people are not alone in their struggle. We are called to stand with them, to support them, to pray for them, and to be their advocates in a world that too often turns a blind eye to their suffering. Israel's crisis is our crisis. Their fight for survival is our fight for truth, justice, and peace. And if we truly care about the well-being of the Jewish people, then we must act. We must show them that we are with them, that we understand their pain, and that we will not back down when the forces of evil seek to destroy them. In their time of crisis, it's up to us to stand with Israel, to offer our support, and to remember that when we stand with Israel, we are standing with God's redemptive plan for the world. When it comes to supporting Israel during times of crisis, the role of the United States cannot be overstated. Over the decades, the U.S. has been a steadfast ally of Israel, offering political, military, and financial support. In times of conflict, this relationship becomes even more critical as Israel faces existential threats from its enemies. The actions taken by the U.S. government to assist Israel during these times are not just symbolic, they are vital for Israel's survival. As we look at the current situation, it's important to recognize that the U.S. is providing more than just rhetoric or diplomatic support. The U.S. government has acted decisively to ensure that Israel has the resources it needs to defend itself from the growing threats posed by Hamas and other groups. One of the key aspects of this support has been military assistance. The U.S. has always been there for Israel in terms of providing military aid, but in recent weeks, that support has escalated as the violence has intensified. The U.S. has delivered advanced weapon systems, including precision-guided munitions, which are critical in Israel's efforts to defend its civilian population from rocket attacks. These munitions are designed to target Hamas's missile-launching sites and weapons caches with pinpoint accuracy, minimizing collateral damage and preventing civilian casualties as much as possible. This kind of military assistance is invaluable for Israel as it faces an enemy that does not share the same rules of engagement. While Israel seeks to avoid harming innocent civilians, Hamas and other terrorist organizations use civilians as human shields, making it incredibly difficult to target military sites without risking harm to non-combatants. The U.S. has recognized this challenge and provided Israel with the tools it needs to conduct military operations with greater precision. In addition to precision-guided munitions, the U.S. has sent additional ammunition and military supplies to support Israel's defense systems, including the Iron Dome missile defense system. The Iron Dome has proven to be incredibly effective in intercepting and destroying incoming missiles, preventing them from reaching their targets. The U.S. has not only supported the continued operation of the Iron Dome, but has also provided additional funding and resources to expand its capabilities. This defense system is critical for protecting Israeli cities, civilian infrastructure, and the lives of ordinary citizens from the onslaught of rockets fired by Hamas. Furthermore, the U.S. has positioned military assets in the region to demonstrate its commitment to Israel's security. The deployment of the USS Gerald Ford, an aircraft carrier, to the eastern Mediterranean sends a clear message to Israel's enemies that the US stands ready to support its ally. This show of military strength serves as a deterrent to any further escalation from Hamas or other groups, as well as from Iran, which has been providing support to Hamas and Hezbollah. The US has also positioned B-52 bombers in the region, ready to provide air support if necessary. This is not just a symbolic gesture, it is a demonstration of the US commitment to Israel's security and its willingness to intervene if needed. But military support isn't the only way the US is backing Israel during this conflict. Diplomatic efforts have also been crucial in ensuring that Israel has the international support it needs. President Biden has been vocal in his support for Israel, making it clear that the US stands firmly behind Israel's right to defend itself against terrorist attacks. This has been particularly important as Israel has faced increasing condemnation from certain parts of the world. While some countries have criticized Israel for its military actions, President Biden has consistently reaffirmed that Israel has the right to defend its people and its territory from aggression. In fact, President Biden's stance has been unwavering in the face of immense international pressure. He has publicly called the actions of Hamas an act of sheer evil and made it clear that the US will continue to provide the necessary support to Israel during this time of crisis. This kind of leadership is essential, as it sends a strong message to the world that the US is not backing down in its commitment to Israel's security. It also reassures the people of Israel that they are not alone in this fight, that their ally across the ocean is firmly in their corner, supporting them every step of the way. Beyond the military and diplomatic support, the US has also taken steps to ensure that humanitarian aid reaches those who need it in the region. The US has been working to deliver food, medical supplies, and other forms of aid to the Palestinian people in Gaza, while also supporting efforts to provide care for those displaced by the conflict. While the primary goal is to ensure Israel's security, the US has recognized the importance of addressing the humanitarian needs that arise in the wake of such violence. The US has called for a two-state solution and has consistently supported efforts to bring both Israelis and Palestinians to the negotiating table. However, that process can only work if there is peace. And unfortunately, groups like Hamas do not seek peace, they seek to destroy Israel. That is why the US has made it clear that Israel's security comes first, and it is committed to ensuring that Israel has the resources it needs to protect its citizens and defend its borders. The importance of continued US backing for Israel cannot be overstated. In the face of an existential threat from groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, Israel relies on the support of its allies to maintain its security and its right to exist. The US has been Israel's most steadfast ally for decades, and this relationship is more important now than ever. Without the support of the US, Israel would face even greater challenges in defending itself against terrorist attacks and maintaining its security in an increasingly hostile region. Moreover, the US support for Israel is not just about military aid or political backing, it is about a shared commitment to values. Both the US and Israel are democracies, and both nations value the right to self-determination, the rule of law, and the protection of human rights. This shared commitment to these values is what makes the relationship between the US and Israel so special and so critical. When Israel is under attack, it is not just Israel that is fighting, it is the principles of democracy and freedom that are under attack. That's why the US has always stood with Israel, and why it is so important that the US continues to do so now. President Biden's leadership during this crisis has been vital in ensuring that Israel receives the support it needs to defend itself. His administration has not only provided military aid, but has also worked to ensure that Israel's right to self-defense is respected on the world stage. This kind of leadership is crucial during a time when Israel is facing not only military threats, but also diplomatic pressure. The US commitment to Israel's security sends a message to Israel's enemies that the US will not tolerate terrorism, and that it will support Israel in its efforts to secure its borders and protect its people. It is also important to recognize that the US's support for Israel is not just about the present, it is about the future. By supporting Israel now, the US is helping to ensure that Israel remains a stable, secure democracy in the Middle East for generations to come. Israel's survival is not just important for the Jewish people, it is important for the stability of the entire region and for the cause of peace. The US has a vested interest in ensuring that Israel can continue to thrive, and that it can face the challenges ahead with confidence and strength. As the conflict continues to unfold, the US must remain committed to its support for Israel. The road ahead may be difficult, but with continued military, diplomatic, and humanitarian support, Israel can navigate these challenges and emerge stronger. The US has always been there for Israel in times of need, and it must continue to be there now. As President Biden has said, this is a time for unwavering support, and the US will stand by Israel no matter what. This kind of leadership and commitment is exactly what Israel needs in this time of crisis, and it is what the world needs to see. The ongoing war with Hamas is nothing short of catastrophic. What started as a coordinated attack on Israel has escalated into a full-blown conflict with devastating consequences for both sides. Hamas, a terrorist organization that has been bent on the destruction of Israel since its inception, has launched an unprecedented series of attacks on Israeli civilians, military installations, and infrastructure. In these early stages, Hamas has shown a level of brutality that is hard to comprehend as they indiscriminately fire rockets at cities, towns, and villages, causing widespread damage and loss of life. What makes this conflict particularly terrifying is the unpredictability of it all. While Hamas has always been a threat, the scale and intensity of the current attacks have caught Israel by surprise. What was initially thought to be an isolated incident has quickly turned into an all-out war, with Hamas pushing the boundaries of their tactics. These are not just sporadic missile strikes, they are organized, coordinated efforts to terrorize and destabilize Israel. The constant barrage of rockets and the growing number of casualties have left Israel reeling and in a state of constant alert. Israel's Iron Dome defense system, which has saved countless lives by intercepting incoming rockets, is stretched to its limits. Despite its effectiveness, no system can protect every individual, and civilians are living in fear of every siren, every blast, and every moment that could be the next attack. But what's even more worrying is the potential for this conflict to escalate further. Hamas is not the only threat Israel faces. To the north, Hezbollah, another Iranian-backed terrorist group, looms large. Hezbollah has a vast arsenal of missiles and rockets, many of which are capable of reaching deep into Israeli territory. The group has a history of hostility toward Israel, and its ties to Iran make it even more dangerous. Iran has long been a supporter of Hamas, Hezbollah, and other militant groups in the region, supplying them with weapons, training, and funding. If Hezbollah decides to open a second front on Israel's northern border, it could stretch Israel's military resources even thinner and result in even greater casualties and destruction. Hezbollah's involvement would be a game changer. They have been preparing for a potential conflict with Israel for years, and their capabilities have only grown stronger over time. The group is not just limited to small-scale attacks, it is capable of launching coordinated, large-scale offensives. The last time Hezbollah fought Israel in 2006, the conflict lasted more than a month and caused significant damage on both sides. The outcome of that war was inconclusive, but it highlighted just how destructive Hezbollah could be. If Hezbollah enters the fray now, the situation could spiral out of control very quickly. And then there is the ever-present threat of Iran. Iran has been a key player in the Middle East for years, and its support for groups like Hamas and Hezbollah is no secret. Iran's influence in the region is vast, and its ambitions to expand its power through proxies are well documented. Iran has long sought to undermine Israel's security and its position as the dominant power in the region. With its backing of Hamas and Hezbollah, Iran has placed itself directly in the path of Israel's survival. And as the conflict with Hamas intensifies, it's likely that Iran will become more directly involved, either through providing more support to its proxies or even by escalating the situation itself. The situation is complicated by the fact that many of these forces are interconnected. Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran are all aligned in their hatred of Israel, and their shared goal of Israel's destruction binds them together. While they may have different tactical approaches, they share the same ideology and the same endgame. Iran is actively working behind the scenes to ensure that these groups are well-equipped, well-funded, and ready to strike at Israel's most vulnerable points. If the current war continues to escalate, it's possible that other Iranian-backed groups could join in, and the conflict could spread beyond Israel's borders, engulfing the entire region in a wider, more dangerous war. It's in this context that we must understand the full scope of the threat facing Israel. This is not just a localized conflict between two sides with differing political views. It's a battle for survival, for Israel. This war represents the latest chapter in an ongoing struggle against forces that have long sought its destruction. And as the situation continues to develop, the potential for more violence and greater loss of life grows with each passing day. It's clear that Hamas has no interest in peace, and the support it receives from Iran and other groups only strengthens its resolve to continue its attacks. But what's even more frightening is the uncertainty that lies ahead. If Hamas is not defeated, they will continue to wage war on Israel, and the cycle of violence will persist. The threat of escalation looms large, and Israel's enemies are emboldened by the instability in the region. While Israel is doing everything it can to protect its people and defend its territory, there is no telling how far this war could go. The longer the conflict lasts, the more likely it is that other actors in the region will become involved, either directly or indirectly. This could lead to an even more dangerous situation, one that could destabilize the entire Middle East. That's why it's so important for us to continue to support Israel during this time of crisis. Israel is facing an unprecedented threat, and the international community must stand with them as they fight for their survival. This is not just a political issue, it's a moral issue. Israel has a right to defend itself, and the world must recognize that right. The UN and other allies must continue to provide the support Israel needs to win this war and protect its people. This is not just about military assistance, it's about standing up for justice and the right of a nation to exist in peace. If Israel falls, the implications for the world are dire. The forces arrayed against Israel are not just fighting for land or power, they are fighting to destroy a people, a culture, and a way of life. If Israel loses, the entire world loses. In addition to military support, we must also offer our prayers for Israel. The people of Israel need our prayers now more than ever. They are living through a nightmare, and they need to know that they are not alone. Prayer is powerful, and it's our way of showing solidarity with those who are suffering. As the situation worsens, we must not forget the importance of praying for peace, for the protection of innocent lives, and for the safety of the Israeli people. We must pray for wisdom and guidance for Israel's leaders, that they may make the right decisions in the face of unimaginable pressure. And we must pray for the people of Gaza that they may one day know peace and be free from the grip of terror that has held them in its sway for so long. The situation in Israel is dire, and the stakes are higher than ever. As the war with Hamas continues, the potential for further escalation is very real. The threat from Hezbollah, Iran, and other groups is growing, and the risk of the conflict spreading beyond Israel's borders is ever present. But even in the face of these threats, Israel remains strong. Its people remain resilient, and its military remains one of the most capable in the world. However, Israel cannot do this alone. It needs our support, our prayers, and our unwavering commitment to standing by them in this dark hour. The battle is far from over, and we must continue to stand with Israel, not just today, but in the days, weeks, and months to come. Their survival depends on it. As we watch the events unfolding in Israel and the broader Middle East, it's hard not to think about the prophetic significance of everything that is happening. Many people see the current conflict as part of a much larger divine plan that has been unfolding for thousands of years. For those who look to biblical prophecy, the involvement of nations like Russia and Iran in the Middle East is especially notable. These two countries, in particular, are playing a significant role in the events that are taking place, and their involvement aligns with what the Bible has said about the end times. And one of the most prominent passages in biblical prophecy that many people point to when looking at the current situation is Ezekiel 38 and 39. These chapters describe a time when a group of nations, led by a figure referred to as Gog, will come against Israel in a final battle. The prophecy outlines how these nations will attack Israel in the last days, but God promises that he will defend his people and ultimately bring about their victory. While there is debate over the specific identities of the nations mentioned in this prophecy, many believe that Russia plays a central role in this scenario. In Ezekiel 38, Gog is described as coming from the land of Magog, and many scholars interpret this as a reference to Russia. This is further supported by the fact that Russia has historically had strong ties to the countries in the northern regions of the Middle East, particularly with nations like Syria and Iran. Iran, too, is a significant player in this prophetic narrative. In Ezekiel 38:5, Persia is listed as one of the nations that will join the alliance against Israel. Persia, of course, is the ancient name for modern-day Iran. Iran's involvement in the current conflict is not surprising, considering its long-standing hostility toward Israel. The Iranian government has repeatedly called for the destruction of Israel and has been actively supporting groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, which are at the forefront of the conflict. Iran's role in the Middle East has become more pronounced in recent years, as it has expanded its influence in countries like Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This is seen as part of a broader strategy to establish a powerful coalition of nations that could challenge Israel's existence and sovereignty. And when we look at the alliance between Russia and Iran, the prophetic implications become even more evident. In recent years, these two nations have strengthened their ties, particularly in the context of the Syrian civil war. Russia has provided military support to the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, while Iran has sent troops and weapons to bolster Assad's forces as well. This partnership between Russia and Iran has made them key players in the Middle East, and it is something that many biblical scholars have pointed to as a fulfillment of prophecy. In Ezekiel 38, we see a coalition of nations coming together to attack Israel, and the involvement of Russia and Iran in that coalition seems to be taking shape right before our eyes. But it's not just the involvement of these two nations that is significant, it's also the broader context in which these prophecies are being fulfilled. The Bible tells us that in the last days, Israel will be surrounded by enemies, and that many nations will come against her. We see that happening now as countries like Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, along with Russia's influence, form an ever-tightening circle around Israel. The reality of Israel being isolated, with hostile nations and groups positioned on every side, aligns closely with what the Bible describes as the time of trouble for Israel. And as these events unfold, it's clear that we are witnessing the preparation for a final showdown that was predicted thousands of years ago. What makes this so striking is how specific biblical prophecy has been in predicting the involvement of nations like Russia and Iran. For centuries, these prophecies seem distant and vague, but as the Middle East has become increasingly volatile, it's hard not to see how everything is falling into place. Iran's support for terrorist organizations and its constant threats against Israel are a direct reflection of the prophetic warnings about Persia's role in the last days. Similarly, Russia's growing involvement in the region and its alignment with Iran and other enemies of Israel are putting it squarely in the position described in Ezekiel 38 as the leader of the Gog alliance. As we look at the current situation, it's important to remember that the Bible also tells us that God has a plan for Israel, and that no matter how bad things may look, Israel will ultimately be victorious. In Ezekiel 38:18-23, God speaks about the destruction of the invading armies and his ultimate triumph over those who come against Israel. This passage is a reminder that despite the challenges Israel faces, God will be with them. He will protect them, and he will bring judgment upon those who seek to destroy his people. The prophecy assures us that Israel's enemies will not succeed in their efforts, and that God's sovereignty will prevail. However, even as we hold on to this hope, we must also recognize that the current situation is part of a larger spiritual battle that has been ongoing for millennia. The conflict between Israel and its enemies is not just a political or military issue. It is a spiritual battle for the fulfillment of God's redemptive plan for the world. Satan has been at work throughout history to destroy Israel, and he will continue to do so until the final victory of God. But as believers, we are called to stand with Israel and to support them in prayer and in action as they face these challenges. The involvement of Russia and Iran in this conflict is a clear sign that we are living in a time when biblical prophecy is being fulfilled. The alignment of these nations, as described in Ezekiel 38, is something that should not be taken lightly. It serves as a reminder that we are living in the final days and that the time is short, But at the same time, it is also a reminder that God is in control and that his plans will unfold according to his will. Even in the midst of chaos and uncertainty, we can trust that God's purposes will be accomplished. As we reflect on these prophetic perspectives, it's crucial that we keep Israel in our prayers. This is not just a conflict between two nations. It is a spiritual battle that has eternal consequences. We must pray for the peace of Jerusalem, for the protection of Israel, and for the wisdom of its leaders as they navigate this difficult time. We must also pray that those who oppose Israel, including Russia and Iran, will be thwarted in their plans and that God's justice will prevail. In the coming days, weeks, and months, the situation in the Middle East will likely continue to escalate. But as we watch these events unfold, we can have confidence in the fact that God is working behind the scenes to fulfill his promises. The involvement of Russia and Iran is not a sign of defeat, it is a sign that God's plan is moving forward. And as we continue to support Israel in prayer and in action, we are participating in the fulfillment of biblical prophecy and the ultimate victory of God's kingdom. As we witness the ongoing conflict and the challenges Israel is facing, it's crucial that we come together to support them. This is a time for us to reflect not only on the political situation, but also on the deeper spiritual implications at play. Israel's struggle is tied to God's greater plan for redemption, and in these moments, prayer is one of the most powerful ways we can stand alongside them. We must pray for peace, for the protection of innocent lives, and for wisdom for Israel's leaders during this difficult time. Every prayer, every act of support counts, and we are called to be part of this journey, standing with the people of Israel in their time of need. This is a moment to remember our shared faith and the importance of unity, especially when the world feels so divided. If you feel moved by this message, please like, share, and subscribe to keep the conversation going. Let's continue to stand with Israel and pray for peace. Thank you for being part of this important conversation.